Well, welcome everybody to the webinar. Really great to have you here. I'm really excited to be able to share the 3-minute coach process with you. Really exciting, and for me, this has been a life's work to really be able to share this really amazing message. So great to have everybody here. I can see a few people still coming in. And so we'll just wait a few more seconds till those people come online, and then we can really get started and get into it. But I'm really excited to be able to share this information with you, and to be able to take you through the 3-minute coach process and the 6-step rapid results coaching program. So really great to have you guys here. Some people I know quite well, and others not so much. So really great to have you here, and really step through this process with you on our journey of six webinars, leading into, for some of you, a live event early next year. Obviously, I've got some live events coming up, but certainly, there'll be some live events that this webinar series is going to lead into. So check out for those dates, and love to obviously have you come along to the live events. And if you're out of Australia, there will be live events happening at some point down the track. So really looking forward to getting over and sharing that with you. So still a couple of people coming online, which is really fantastic. And but let's get into it, and let's get this process started. So really great to be doing this with you guys. So I think that there's there's a real coaching trap that a lot of coaches find themselves in at some point in time. And I think that that trap really revolves around the swapping time for money, and getting caught in that time trap of swapping time for money. And when you swap time for money, a whole range of things starts happening. One is that you cap your income, and so you've only got so many hours in the week, and therefore only so many hours that you can actually earn revenue. I think also it caps your ability to be able to go out and do other things. And so giving you the flexibility to be able to offer other products. And if you're like me, you have a number of different clusters where you're leveraging things like speaking and training and mentoring and authoring and facilitating. And so when we get caught in the coaching trap of swapping time for money, then we limit our ability to be able to leverage those other activities. And so I think it's really important that we start to break free from the coaching trap, break free from that swapping time for money, but also limiting our ability to leverage the amazing message that we have and the knowledge that we have. So we want to get out of swapping time for money. And for me, this journey was really a lot about that. How do I get out of that swapping time for money? How do I really start to chunk my time down so that I can become more effective without losing the ability to provide, really great outcomes for my clients? And so as I went through this journey, I realized that that chunking my time down, actually becoming more efficient, made me become more effective. And my clients ended up getting much better outcomes the more I seemed to chunk the time down. And so I didn't go from the hour coaching session or hour and a half coaching session down to 3 to 15 minutes straight away. I chunked my time down, and through that process, I learned a whole lot of skills about how do I still remain really effective, get better outcomes, yet all the time making sure that I'm chunking that time down so that I could be as effective in the shortest amount of time. And so the 3-minute coach process really came out of that desire to become more efficient with my time while not losing any of the results that I was getting or any of my effectiveness. And, like I said, the fun part about that journey was I actually became more effective. So I actually got better outcomes the more I seemed to chunk my time down. And some of that we're going to have a bit of a chat about tonight, because I removed some of the fluff, I removed some of the stuff in the coaching sessions that really weren't valid and weren't adding to the session in any shape or form. And so, so I really started to get those better outcomes. And so the process we're going to go on is, how do I get 3 times the coaching fees? By dropping my time down and increasing my money. And really what we're doing is we're increasing dollar per hour value. By chunking our time down, but really focusing on selling the value, not selling the time. So a lot of coaching is sold by time. And for those coaches out there who are selling by time, I want to encourage that you start to flip that mindset and start selling by value. And so it's really about the outcome, not necessarily the process. Whereas I think a lot of coaching is focused on the process. And therefore, people get in their heads that I'm buying an hour of your time, or I'm buying 12 hours of your time. And what we want to do is get out of that and go, you're actually buying this amount of value. So what we're going to do is get you from A to B as fast as possible. And we're going to do that in a chunked down time environment. And it's about giving you those outcomes, not about giving you time. And so I think a lot of coaches get caught up in giving time away rather than giving value away. And so when you start giving time away, what ends up happening is that you start feeling guilty if time goes faster, and you feel that, oh, wow, I've got to pad out my sessions. A lot of coaches I've spoken to recently continually tell me that they pad their coaching sessions out sometimes to last the whole hour, because the person's bought the hour and they are expecting an hour. And I think we want to get away from that expectation and look at value. And whether the session lasts for 3 minutes or 15 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour is really irrelevant. It's really about the outcome. What is it that they're trying to achieve, and how can I get them that outcome really quickly and not be selling to time? So I've got a lot more flexibility than with my time, because I may run it a little faster, or it may go a little bit longer than the 15 minutes. But we want to try and get it down to between 3 and 15 minutes. And it doesn't matter whether it's 3, 6, 9 minutes or 15 minutes. We're not selling by the 15 minutes. We're actually selling by the value. So this tool is not only great for coaching sessions and running coaching sessions, it's also really great for sales meetings. So one of the things I find helps me get a sales meeting over the line is showing them some magic. So doing some of my magic, which is helping them to have insights or giving them some experience of coaching. Now, in a normal environment, in a sales meeting, you've got maximum 1 hour that you're going to be meeting with someone to try and convert them, and often a lot less. And so we've got to be able to do our magic in the shortest amount of time possible, because we want to find out all about them. We also want to give them the offer. So we want to be able to run the sales process about what we have to offer them. But we also, I think, want to start putting in some of our magic. And some of you might already be doing this. But often magic, if you're working in an old paradigm, can take a long period of time. And so this process can also benefit by using it in the sales process. So by using it, if you can, so for example, I then tend to break my sales meetings up based on an hour, and I run a 40/5/15. And so I talk, the 40 minutes is about talking all about the client, finding out all about them. I then run 5 minutes on my magic, and then I run 15 minutes on the offer. And obviously, depending on how long the sales meeting will depend on that ratio, but it's basically 40/5/15. And so the 3-minute coach process allows you to run some magic in the 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever it might be in that space. And when you do that, the general sentence that comes out after that is, if we can do this in 5 minutes, imagine what you could achieve spending 90 days with me. And so this process is really fantastic for being able to share your magic. And I use it all the time in a sales process. And it allows me to have a 90% plus sign-up rate when I'm working one-on-one with people. And so it's a great process for that. So the other thing we want to do is get 10 times the results faster. Again, when I started chunking my time down, I realized that I actually became more effective and got better results. So I reckon if we do this right, if we chunk it down right, get the process correct, then we're going to get better results much, much faster. And it really is a dynamic system that you can use in a whole range of areas. Obviously, I've just put life coaching, business coaching, executive coaching, but also, in the sales process, also for managers and leaders of organizations. It's an area that I've trained managers in to run 3-minute coaching sessions with their team. And rather than having to spend, 15, 30, 45, an hour with each of their team members, they get to spend 3 minutes to 15 minutes with their team members. And so, if they've got, if they've got 10 team members, theoretically they can get through every member in 30 minutes. And we're probably all aware as coaches that engagement is a lot about helping people to feel like to feel like to feel like they are acknowledged and respected and listened to. And so this process can do that in a really, really short amount of time, rather than having to spend long time with employees and staff. And I think a lot of managers avoid it because of the time consuming nature of managing teams. And so they often avoid contact, or as much contact as they probably should have, because they often get trapped in elongated conversations that take them away from the job they need to do, and just waste time. So this is a really great process for leaders and managers, and for executive coaches and business coaches. This can be a really great process for you to teach the business owner or executives and managers. And certainly when I run the live events, there is a process we do to pass on that knowledge of how do I actually then teach this information to those people. So we're going to go along on that journey. I think for me that as I've mentioned, it's really about changing the coaching paradigm. Things are different out there now, and I think there's a real change that we need to look at and we need to start to apply. And so for me, it's breaking that barrier of selling your time versus selling your value. And so we want to make sure we're leveraging your value. And so I think at the start, it's about, you're swapping time for money, and that can feel like you're trapped, because it's, when you're stuck in that paradigm, it's really hard to earn any more money or have any more free time. You then get capped out where you get really exhausted. So, you're right at that level where you just can't take any more coaching clients on, because you just don't have any more time. And I think it leads to you becoming commodity based. And so you're actually started to sell a commodity. And when you get into selling a commodity, you really do get trapped, because commodities are shopped around. People are looking for the best price when we're running on a commodity-based business. And so I think that leads to a lot of frustration. And so we want to get across this barrier of swapping time for money and really go into leveraging our value. And so when we do that, we get to diversify our model. And that can get us back to feeling like we're really excited. So if you can chunk your coaching time down, you're going to be able to diversify your model by having more time and energy to do other activities. I think you also get positioned more as an expert when you sell your value than if you get positioned as a coach. And in the thought leadership model, we focus very much on that. And so I think when you do, you actually become more passionate about what you're doing. You find that passion again. And I think if you then can leverage your value, then you actually start to get freedom to, do it the way you want to do it, and have more time to be able to get out there and do all of the things that you want to do and really express your message in more, really amazing ways. So we're going to work with this. We're going to, take you through. I'm going to take you through this process of getting out of swapping time for money, getting into leveraging value. We're going to do that using the fast track model, and I'm going to unpack this over the next few weeks. And we're going to do it through this by really, identifying a picture, getting to the point, getting the play, and getting them on their way. So they come in with blocks, needs, or problems, and we get them out the other side with clarity, momentum, and really on a clear path to momentum. And so I think when we do that, when we really capture the picture and get to the point, we're going to have clear distinctions about what's going on for them. I think when we get to the point and start playing, we're going to have them, build really clear decisions. And I think when they play and they get their picture, they're going to get a real dedication to making it happen for them. Because for me, a lot of this process is about helping to train my clients to pre and post coach themselves. And so the process will take them on that journey. towards the end of the program, we're going to introduce you to the rap sheet process, which is what you're going to give your clients to fill out before they see you. And they're going to fill out and you're going to fill out while you're in the process so that you've got a really great record of what's going on. But it also helps to train them to start pre and post coaching themselves. And so we're really going to get some great momentum when we do that. We're going to do it through the 6-step Lightning Success coaching system. And so this is a real core 3-minute coach process where we're going to get picture, point, and play, but we're going to relay, align, and prescribe what needs to happen. And so we're going to go on that process over the next few weeks, which I'm really looking forward to. So let's have a bit of a chat. Let's sort of start getting into some of it. I'm going to just show you the journey over the next 6 weeks and give you the real context of what's happening over the next 6 webinars. And so we're going to follow this process. Today we're going to look at the picture. We're going to work on time. We're going to look at removing fluff, managing state, and really chunking your time down. So that's the process we're going to look at in today's webinar. And then in week 2, we're going to look at the focus and joining the dots and using a process called feedback loop questioning technique that will really help you to start to join the dots for clients really, really quickly. The week after, we're going to look at laser, what's, really getting down to the point. What's the point using a process called first thought technique and really helping our clients get to that point really fast. Week 4, we're going to look at insights and how we ignite the aha using sensory intelligence. Week 5, we're going to look at the game. Are they on the right court? Are we integrating the insights for them so that they can get on with the job? And then in week 6, we're looking at the actions, rapid momentum, and utilizing the rap sheet process to get our clients really moving quickly. In that process, we're going to cover the core steps, which looks a bit like this. I'm going to go into this in much, much more detail. We're going to look at breaking our sessions down into 3 clear sections where we're going to look at the ask, the show, and the tell. And we're just going to play this game over the next few weeks. And so for those that are madly taking notes, I am recording this webinar, and I'm going to give you access to not only the recorded webinar, but also the slide deck. And so you don't need to go too crazy fast with writing notes, just take in the information, and I will provide you with the recording and also the slide deck so that you can write your notes next to that next time and look at the video if you need to, because I'm going to go pretty fast through this. There's so much to cover and we've really got such little time. So obviously I'm going to encourage those that are on the webinar to also come to the live events, because I think that'll really just help you actually integrate the learning and really be able to do sort of more live practice. So we're going to do that. So let's just get into it. Tonight we're going to look at time. And again, we've talked about getting caught in the time trap. And if we're really to leverage our coaching practice, we have to start mastering time. And we have to start looking at time differently and how we work with time. And to some degree, we have to break a paradigm that it takes an hour to have a coaching session. I was on a live webinar the other day with a whole range of coaches from all around the world, and that would have to be the biggest comment for this process is how the hell do you have effective coaching sessions in such a short period of time? And so I think, to some degree, we're going to have to start mastering time. We're going to have to get our head out of that time that that does take time to get a coaching process through and actually chunk it down and realize that it doesn't have to take that amount of time. So we're going to learn how to master time. And as I said on the webinar, I run 3 different types of coaching sessions with people. The first is where I might catch up with a client for an hour at the start of their session. And maybe, I generally run my sessions over 90-day periods. And so I might catch up with a client for an hour and then every week for the next 3 weeks, run 3 to 15-minute coaching sessions, then catch up for an hour and then again, run the 3 to 15-minute coaching sessions every week. So they're really just hot touch points. Other programs I run is totally just 3 to 15-minute coaching sessions every week. and others are, an hour at the start and then just 15 minutes. Often, in some cases, the sort of 3-minute coach process can be run after an intense period of coaching. So sometimes people like to run their hour every week for a period of time and then segue their clients into 3-minute coaching. Because generally I've found that once you get people moving, once they get into the process, they probably, break through the blocks and some of the barriers to, to some of the things that are stopping them from having success. I find that after that, they don't need as much intense work. And so this is a great process to follow on from that if you're still in the mode of wanting to provide hour sessions for a period of time. This can be a great process to then segue your time down. And so I think the core issue around time is that coaches get caught in the stuff and drama, the fluff, what I would call the fluff and stuff. So coaches often get caught in the fluff and stuff and get caught up in their clients' stuff. And most clients present, in my experience, with fluff and stuff, certainly in the early phases. They come in and they are more than happy to tell you their whole life story or the whole drama that's going on, whether it's at work, with their business, in their life. They're going to come in and just have, verbal diarrhea and throw fluff all over the place. And I think a lot of the times coaches get caught in that. One of the things that happens on our planet is that we're absolutely addicted to this thing called drama. We have a whole medium in the Western world that is designed to feed our drama. It's called television. And so we're addicted to drama. And as a coach, we've got to be really, really careful not to get caught in that drama, not to get caught in the client's fluff and not to get caught in the client's stuff. When I chunked my time down and I got to the 15 minutes and lower, I realized just how much fluff and stuff are in coaching sessions that really don't add any benefit to the session whatsoever, that doesn't actually add value to the session. And granted, I get sometimes that clients need to vent and get their stuff out, and sometimes that leads to some insights. But I think it can be a long-winded way of actually having that happen. And so I think we have to get really good at keeping out of the stuff and keeping out of drama. And in doing so, I think what we need to do is really take control of the session. I think when we allow drama and stuff and fluff to appear, it's a sign in my head that we've actually lost control of the session. So we've actually handed control back to the client, and they're running the show. And I think it's important that that as much as we allow ourselves to flow with the client, we've got to maintain control of the session. Otherwise, it elongates in time. And so as part of that process, I think the first thing we really need to do is tame the line. And so we need to tame our clients. We need to train our clients how to behave in our sessions. And the rap sheet, which I'm going to show you later in the program, is a process that's actually going to help us to do that. So we want to make sure we're taming the line, because if we don't, they do get out of control, and then they, as this line's done, tear us apart. And so we've got to really make sure we're taming the line and keeping control of the sessions. And sometimes just the process of chunking time down and clients knowing that they've only got a short period of time with you actually starts to pull some of that out. And so the process alone will actually help to do that, will help to have clients remove their own fluff. And as they get into the process over the number of weeks that you work with them, they'll get better and better at doing that on their own, so taming themselves. But in the early days, or the early phase, we want to make sure we're taming the line. I think then it's really important that we maintain a fence line, so that we make sure that we're holding really tight parameters around how the client's going to behave, and also how we're asking questions and making sure we're not asking those questions that are going to lead the client off on some tangent down into fluff, drama, or stuff. And so we've got to make sure we're really, really careful that we maintain that fence, that we keep strong boundaries, and we make sure we're framing up really, really well. And I think, in the final step, we want to make sure we're holding the line. So we want to make sure that we're really, holding a clear line, because if we don't, again, things are going to get out of control. And if we're aiming for a target like this runway and we don't maintain the line, then we're going to miss what's going on, because the further away the line is, just like in a flying scenario, when you're coming in to land, the further away the runway is, the harder it is to actually align to it. Commercial airliners have instruments that keep them aligned to the runway, because from a visual sense, it's actually quite difficult until you get a lot closer to the runway. And by that stage, you could be quite, offline. And so that can be really dangerous. So in a coaching environment, it's the same thing. We want to make sure we're keeping them in line and online, and not going off on some crazy tangent that's going to elongate the time that we're spending with our clients. And so we want to then make sure we're chunking time. So we want to make sure we're taking our time from wherever we are now, 60 minutes, down to 3 to 15 minutes. And we're going to go through that process of chunking that time. As we do that, we want to make sure that we're managing state, keeping people out of their story and out of their drama, so that we can really elevate the effectiveness of what we're doing, and make sure that we're getting the best results possible in the shortest amount of time. So let's have a look at sort of 3 core principles that I want to run through with this. The first is around framing time. We've got to make sure we're framing our time. One of the first things I did when I started to develop this process was that I looked at I broke my sessions down into 3 sections. So I said there was a start, a middle, and an end of any coaching session or any coaching process. And what I started to do was frame time around that process. So what I did was I set parameters for each of those sections. So for each of the 3 sections of my coaching sessions, I set really clear parameters that I was only going to spend so much time in the start phase, only so much time in the middle phase, and only so much time at the end. And so I really made strict parameters with myself about what that was going to look like for me. So what are the parameters? And so we're going to do some of that later in today's webinar. We're going to look at setting parameters, and some of the home play I'm going to get you to do is start to set those parameters and start to work and tighten your sessions around those parameters. Now, for some of you at hour-long sessions, this is going to be a really great exercise to help you to start chunking down to 45 and then 30. And once you get to 30, it's not a hard jump to go to 15 or even below. If you're already at 30, which I know some are, then chunking, then setting your parameters is not going to be as important, but I think it's still a really great exercise to do, and just see how you go with maintaining that time. And so when you set those parameters, the pressure's on to a degree, and you're going to watch that time, and you're going to start to automatically, all by yourself, start to remove the fluff out of your sessions. And so really important that we start to watch how that happens. And just the chunking time alone will actually start to do that. Will actually start to get you to identify fluff and get you to remove that. And so you really want to be on high alert for the fluff, because we really want you to make sure that you're being clear about what you're taking out, because the important thing is what you take out, because then what's left is the magic. Then what's left is the easy identifiable aha moments, insights, which is really the core value in what you're offering. I think from a coaching point of view, it really is the aha moments, the insights that create the value for a client. Because clients are too in their stuff to be able to see what's really going on. And so they use us coaches to find that clarity. And so I think when we start to, when the fluff starts to remove, all that's left is the important stuff, is the stuff that they're paying us for, the value that we can deliver. So just chunking time down alone will actually start to help you identify fluff and help you to start removing that fluff. I think the other thing that's really important is we've got to manage state. So we've got to manage the, mental, emotional, state of our clients, so they don't run off down into the drama. And as I've just spoken about, that process is really about making sure we're controlling the session, making sure we're managing the client's state of being. So making sure that we're not leading them down into some drama or into stuff or fluff, because I think a lot of the time it's not just the client's fault and that's happening. It's actually the coach's fault because we ask leading questions which dive us deeper into the fluff than we actually need to go. And so we have to start to become cognizant that we don't ask leading questions that take us deep down or deeper into the fluff. And so that there's a process I'm going to take you through over the next few sessions about how do I identify what the really critical important stuff is, so that I don't lose anything as I drop my time down. And I think when you get really good at the process, then you won't lose any of the really core stuff. You'll actually just get rid of the peripheral and really get get into the core stuff that's really valuable. And that's when you're going to be able to control your sessions much more effectively. So we want to start thinking about controlling our sessions. So I'd love to hear about what was most valuable out of the stuff that I've said so far, and then we're going to get stuck into some of the detail around this and some of the how-to. So love you to type in what was most valuable for you. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to do that. Love to hear your thoughts about some of the stuff that I've discussed, and really love to share some of that. So yeah, if you could type some of that in, that would be really great. Yeah, great. Thanks, Corinne. So Corinne says idea of setting parameters with time. Yeah, it's a really, yeah, it's a great process when you do it. It'll help you start to chunk, and start to work in shorter parameters, and it automatically helps you to start to start removing fluff, which which I think is really great. Thank you for that. And so, so Jenny says about, identifying fluff. And so identifying fluff and realizing, there's still fluff there, or I'm allowing fluff to happen. And so, I think it's really great to be able to identify the fluff. And as you've probably done, Jenny, just thinking back over some sessions recently, which you may have had today or yesterday or last week, and just actually how much fluff is actually in there. And I think once you start to see it or start to realize, you start to notice just how much fluff we actually do have in the process. Thank you for that. And Adam says, yep, fluff as well. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And Joanne says it's about managing state for her and just not getting caught in that. Yeah, great. So yeah, you don't want to get caught in that. And so Leander says not leading your clients, which is really fantastic, and also falling down the rabbit hole. Absolutely. And I think we do get caught diving down in that rabbit hole. So thank you for that, Leander. I think we do. We get caught, we get stuck in that rabbit hole. And once you're in the rabbit hole, it's really hard to get out sometimes. It's really hard to dive out of that. Once you're in it, it's almost rude to get out of it. And so we've got to make sure we don't go into that rabbit hole. Otherwise, we're really stuck. We're in all sorts of problems because we're then going to have to deal with that situation. So I'm going to talk a bit about how we deal with getting caught in a rabbit hole shortly. But I think we've got to make sure that we don't end up down that rabbit hole in the first place. And I think, questioning is a really important part of that process. Chris says, down in the drama with the client to dark, and everyone gets really foggy and hazy. You're absolutely right. It gets really dark and cold and hazy and foggy, and then everyone starts to get lost. For me, when I started coaching, I call this the bead of sweat moment. That bead of sweat moment where you're sitting there and you're lost, the client's lost, and you're the one who's meant to be, guiding this process and coming up with insights or, really cleverness. And this little bead of sweat rolls off your brow as you go, I have no idea what's going on. And often when we get caught in that rabbit hole, that's exactly what happens. So we don't want to get caught down that rabbit hole. So thank you for that feedback, guys. That was great. So I think it's really about expanding the possibilities that, maybe it is possible to have 3 to 15 minute coaching sessions. And for those that are at an hour, hour and a half, I want you to start to expand your mind and believe that it is possible to do this. Maybe it's possible to chunk my time down. And if your parameter is an hour, hour and a half, and your belief system sort of stops you at, oh my God, how could this be possible? Then I go, would it be possible to drop it down to 45 minutes? And then as you drop that down, drop it down the next chunk and the next chunk, and just go in small chunks, I think is the best way to manage this process so that you can see the reality and expand the possibility that maybe this can happen. So let's take this for a bit of a test drive in some respect. Let's just have a little bit of a look at this. And I think, for me, the key piece to this puzzle is about chunking time and making sure we're chunking our time down. And so the process that I use for this is very much around. And let me just bring this up. Not that, is very much around, yeah, here we go, great, is making sure that I'm putting parameters around my time. And so what I'm going to get you guys to do is to frame up what you're currently doing. And so for me, I look at that there are three sections to the process. There's the start, there's the middle, and there's the end. And so in the 3-minute coach process, I might sort of call this something like ask, show, and tell. And so for me at the start, I want to ask lots of really clever questions that aren't going to lead us down the rabbit hole, but actually get us to find the picture really, really quickly. I'm then going to want to show them the insight in this middle piece. So this is where I want to provide the insights, and this is really where my value lies. And so from a coaching process, my value very much lies in this section here. Yep, very much in this section. And so what I want to do right now is I'm going to flip this for a moment. One of the things that I found has happened just recently is Apple has updated some software, and GoToWebinar hasn't quite come to grips with it. And so sometimes when you're running some things like what I've just run, GoToWebinar goes a bit crazy. So it may not be going crazy at your end, but it's definitely going crazy at my end. So I'm just going to stop that for a second. We're going to chunk back into here, and hopefully this will run it just off this. And I'll, as much as I love drawing, give me a whiteboard or give me a iPad, we're going to have to run it a bit like this right this second. And so this process I call session mapping. And so start, middle, and end. And for me, the context around start, middle, and end is picture, point, and play. What's the picture? Making sure I'm getting a really clear picture of what's going on for that person. What's the point? So what's the actual, insight that they need to get from this? What's really, really going on? And at the end, I want them to be clear about what game they're playing and what's the next strategy in that game. And so for that process, what I'm going to do is, you can fill in the content yourself. What content am I going to cover? And that might depend on what session you're at, depending on how prescribed your coaching is. Obviously, in a mentor role, that's going to be highly prescribed. In a coaching role, it'll depend how you work and what program you're running. So you fill in that content. If I'm running a 3-minute program, or a 15-minute program, I'm going to want to be clear on my timing. So I'm going to allow 3 minutes for the start, 10 minutes for the middle, and 2 minutes for the end. You can run whatever time works for you. This is just the way I chunk the time down. The key is to pick a time. And then as you're running through it is to really watch that time and get really, really clear with the time and hold strong to that time. So don't deviate from that time. Once the 3 minutes up, you want to get on to the next piece. So you want to come up with the point. Now, again, if you're running hour and a half sessions, I don't suggest you go to 15 minutes straight away. I suggest you chunk a little bit so that your belief system catches up with reality. Maybe you feel courageous enough to chunk down to 30 minutes if you're at an hour, or if you're an hour and a half to an hour. or to 45 minutes. So what I want you to do is I want you to map out your sessions based on where you are now, and then obviously based on where you want to be. And so we want to, get you to aspire to chunk down to a degree, and make sure you're really holding strong to each of these time frames. And the really interesting thing that I find happens with this is that when you actually set a time, when you actually put out an intention of time, it's amazing how each section starts to work towards time. Initially when I did this, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a huge effort. I'm going to run over time. It's just going to go pear-shaped. And the funny part about it is I found that it absolutely didn't. And that it was almost like the universe was conspiring to assist me in this process. And that the client already knew that we were on a time schedule here, and that they only had 3 minutes to to find the picture, and 10 minutes to get to the point, and 2 minutes to get out of the room. And they just sort of started to comply, which was really amazing. So one of the home play items I'm going to get you to do is to actually map out your sessions, to actually chunk down your sessions and look at, okay, maybe do a map of where you are now and a map of where you want to be. I'm going to show you and want you to apply the context to picture point play. In the interim, you can set your own context based on the work that you're doing. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to chunk into that and use that model of picture point play. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that over the next few weeks. So in the meantime, I just want you to go, okay, what does my sessions look like? What time am I at now? And what time do I want to be? And really start chunking that and start focusing on chunking that time down. Let's have a look at the next bit, which is really about removing fluff and starting to manage state. Again, I'm going to have to run without pretty pictures, which, I'll just get over myself and we'll be fine with all of that. And we'll just run it this way. So we want to make sure we're removing fluff and managing state. And so some of you have been on a bit of a journey with me, will recognize some of this, but I want to go into just a little bit more detail. So I think the first bit is we've got to watch how we're questioning. We've got to not use leading questions that's going to take us into the fluff. So some things like leading questions that I find is, how are you going is often a leading question. Definitely questions around feeling are ones that will absolutely lead you down the rabbit hole and in the wrong path. So one of the things that I say to my coaches is that we need to remove the word feeling out of our coaching sessions. You can bookend a session or a section of a session with the word feeling, but in the 3-minute coach process, I think it's best to leave that out the road, because often the drama is going to be led by the feeling. So we don't want to do that. Other questions like, how have you gone last week, is probably a dangerous question. So we want to make sure that we're not asking those leading questions, but rather asking, sort of prescriptive questions like, so tell me about that exercise, and things that are more prescriptive and more sort of leading and directing where we want them to go, rather than being open-ended and potentially leading us into trouble. So some of you have been on a mentor journey with me will remember this state management process. So for those that haven't, I just want to cover off on this, because we've got to manage state. And so in this process, what we find is there are 3 brains that we're going to be dealing with: the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the primate brain. A lot of this information comes from Jung psychology and the evolution of the brain by Paul D. MacLean, who's a neuroscientist, and he wrote a book called The Truman Brain, which is the evolution of the brain. And so as the brain has evolved over millions of years, thousands and thousands of years, we started with a small brain, which is the reptilian brain, went to a mammalian brain as it expanded, and now in the primate brain. And so for me, I think what we want to do is take people from a perceived consciousness state into a potential consciousness state and into a practical consciousness state. So what ends up happening is most of the fluff and stuff come from a perceived consciousness state, where the client is getting a distorted view of what's really going on. And I think drama, fluff stuff starts to create that perceived consciousness where a lot of the time people point outside of themselves. If only they wouldn't do that. They did this to me. and they start to build this fluff around them to protect themselves from going inward and seeing what's really going on, but also to create support for their cause. And so the more dramatic something is, the more embellished the story is, the more likely people are to get attached to that story and then become a raving fan and help you to continue that process. So we want to make sure we get them out of that. I think they're going to present with three states. They're going to present with lots of stuff. And so often clients will start with stuff. They'll just verbal diarrhea, blah, 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 stuff, 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 stuff. We have to be careful not to get caught into that. So when people start conversations with me, I tend to try not to listen to the words they're saying, but rather try and drop deeper and go behind the words and identify what's really being said. Because the language they're generally using is not really what's going on. And if I get caught in that language, then I'm going to get caught in the stuff with them. And it's really important that I don't do that. I think that at a deeper level, so this is really from an analytical point of view, people, deliver stuff because they've really thought a lot about it. And so it becomes quite analytical and primate brain. If we go a little bit deeper, then they're going to start telling us stories. And at the story level, what's happening is they're telling us emotions. They're trying to share and they're becoming really emotive, which is a mammalian brain level. And so it's really important to not to get caught in story. I think story is probably where coaches get most tripped up, is when they get caught in the story. And so I think you can get caught in a little bit of stuff without getting dragged into it. But once you get caught in story, it's all over Red Rover. So you want to make sure that you don't get caught in story. I think at the deepest level, clients are going to be delivering script, and script tends to come from a reptilian brain, which is the reactive brain. And more often than not, we don't know that we're actually doing it. So when we're at a script level of reality, we don't know that we're running those scripts. And I think the greatest growth for a client is when you identify scripts, when you actually bring the script out and show them what that script is. And that script can be as light as saying a word over and over again, like I'm sorry, or I'm not good enough, or something they don't even realize they're saying, right through to deeper script patterns from past or from childhood or from whatever. And it's really important we don't get caught up in that. As coaches, we're not there to counsel a situation. What we're there to do is identify a situation and help them to move on powerfully. And so it's much more about, okay, we're living with this script. What do we do with that? How do we empower you to move on from that? And so I think when that happens, the way to manage this process is, at a script level, it's about giving them awareness. At a story level, it's about understanding. And at a stuff level, it's about insight, providing them with insight that what they're doing is just stuff. In a lot of cases, I will identify this really early with my clients. And every time they fall into this trap, I'll just identify it. Because at the end of the day, no one actually wants to be in this stuff, story, or script. And so clients will start to self-manage if you just quickly identify and help them to go to practical consciousness, because no one wants to live in perceived consciousness state. And so what we find is that, that people, look like this. And so at a high level, people will come in a certain state. And so often that state, revolves around illusion. But they're going to come in and start looking like this. And what's really going on is that that there's a little bit of stuff, quite a bit of story, and a whole lot of script. And so we want to make sure that we're getting down to that as really fast as possible. And so we're wanting to make sure we're doing that. So at a sort of, at a coaching level, what we're wanting to make sure we're doing is make sure that we're managing that process as best we can. And so in doing that, what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to make sure we're controlling the beingness of what's going on in that moment. We're controlling the feeling and the thinking, and we're providing clarity, containment, and insight. And through this process, providing clarity in the being level is that we want to disconnect. We want to make sure we're letting go of any of the stuff that they're telling us and go beyond that, go deeper to hear what's really, really going on. We want to make sure that we're disassociating from any of the feelings and helping them to disassociate so that they can bring awareness. And if we can elevate them into thinking, into a more irrational state, then they're going to have more clarity. One of the techniques that I often use when people go into feelings is ask them what they think about that situation. So when they start telling you feelings or they start to go into that emotive space, um, yeah, the first thing I'll do is ask them to think about the state. So how do you think about that? What do you think about that? And that helps them to elevate and go into a more rational state. From a containment point of view, we want to make sure that we're identifying that auto reaction. We're really identifying the scripts and making sure that we're helping them to be clear about that auto reaction. From a feeling point of view, we want to make sure that the story is that we're identifying them playing in that drama, and make sure that they can see that that's what they're actually doing, is playing in that drama, and that's going to help contain and manage that state. And the final, point at the stuff level is that, often that's shown by them pointing a finger, and so we want to help them to understand that the stuff of pointing finger is just them pointing back at themselves. And so I think that helps you. That will help to contain and manage the stuff if we're making sure we're identifying that. We then want to obviously create the value by giving them the aha moments, use the leverage by providing the insights, and get them really clear about the actions, about what to do about their state. And getting to that point really, really quickly is part of the process of the 3-minute coach. So we really want to start thinking about the whole state management process. Just thinking about that is going to help you to make sure you're containing your clients and containing the session so that it doesn't get out of control, so that your clients don't start to hijack your sessions, and so that they don't go on longer than they need to. Because remember, the stuff, story, and script is just that. It's just stuff. It's just fluff. Those three things are the biggest pieces of fluff in any session, and we want to make sure that we're containing it, providing clarity, getting insights, and making sure that we're managing that process strictly. If you're going to get your sessions to 3 to 15 minutes, this is absolutely critical. And so when you go out into the world now and start doing your coaching sessions again, I really want you to have a heightened sense of awareness of, story, stuff, and script, and all the fluff that's involved in your sessions. And again, just starting to chunk your time down will have you remove that stuff automatically, remove the fluff automatically. So I want you to start to obsess about state management and chunking that time down and starting to contain the sessions and maintaining control of your sessions. So I'd love to hear, are there any takeaways, anything you've learnt, noticed, or would like to share? Love to hear some of your feedback around that. So I'd love you just to type in once more before we finish tonight around anything you've learnt, you've noticed, or you'd like to share. Really love you to do that. Then I'm going to set some home play for you and some sort of actions that you can take this week, and we'll have a really brief chat about what's going to happen over the next few weeks. We'll do that. So Corinne says, can you give a couple of examples of prescriptive questioning? Yeah, absolutely. So some of the sort of question that I do is you want to be really focused on what's going on for them. So prescriptive questioning for me is about, tell me about that thing or that exercise. So what I'm doing is pointing to a particular point. And so rather than sort of really open-ended about, so how's it going, what's happening for you, going really deep, really fast and quick around, tell me about that point. So tell me about that exercise. So often when a client comes in and they had 3 critical actions to do for last week, 3 actions to do for last week, I'll hone straight into those actions. So, tell me about that action. And things like, tell me about the result. What was the result of doing that action? What was the outcome of doing that action? So rather than going in on, how'd you find doing that action? What happened when you did that action? I try and contain the question so that it doesn't allow them to go into the drama. And tell me about is probably one of the best ones to start with. Tell me about that. What happened when, not so much what happened when you did, but where did that, where has that got you? What's been the point of that, or what's been the exact outcome of that? So to give me, things also like, so what's 3 things that happened from that, or what's 2 things, or 1 thing that's happened from that? Tell me the 1 thing, or tell me the best thing that's happened out of that, or the most powerful thing that's happened out of that. So what we're trying to do is chunk down so that they don't then answer in 5 different things. And so using a number can help. So okay, so tell me 1 thing that's come out of that, or 2 things, or 3 things that have come out of that. Tell me specifically about that exercise. What was the 1 thing that you got out of doing that exercise? What was what was the biggest benefit you got out of that exercise? Can be some of the more focused examples of prescriptive questions. So I hope that's answered your question there. So love to hear any other questions people have got. Anything else they've learnt, noticed, or shared would be really, really great. Before we finish up, so if you want to type in, that would be really, really great. Jenny also says, can you give me an example? So we've got lots of examples here, which is great because I want to extrapolate on it of what the stuff is. And so absolutely. So for me, the stuff can revolve around those light things. So for example, if you're in an organizational environment, or you're coaching someone in an organizational environment, and some of the stuff that they might come up with is the he said, she said stuff. My boss said this, or the employees are saying that, or there's this he said, she said is just stuff. It's things that you wouldn't want to get involved with or get caught up in that we inevitably do. And so it's generally that light, what I would call crap that goes on sometimes, where people just get, into that drama, where they're just bringing up stuff that doesn't matter. So the core part of fluff is stuff that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he said this, she did that, necessarily. And I think the learning here, which we're going to learn through some sensory intelligence exercises over the next bit, is that we've got to learn to extract and really get clear of identifying, well, what is the stuff that's just stuff that I don't need to listen to, and what is the stuff that maybe I need to take note of. And although the he said, she said isn't necessarily important, there could be some aspects in there which are. And certainly the aspects around the client themselves could be important. So whenever people point out, we want to make sure we're pointing back and trying to get them to see the insight in some of that stuff. Excellent. So I just want to finish off now with a couple of home play items for you guys to do, which would be really great. And so the 3 critical actions that I want you to take this week is obviously start to chunk your time. So complete a session map. The second thing is to start removing fluff by just identifying that there is that stuff there, that there is fluff going on. And without having to do anything with it yet, just start to, in your head, go, oh, yeah, that's fluff, and that's fluff, and oh, I can see the fluff. Whether you do it during or after the process, it doesn't matter. Just start to really identify that. And the final bit is start to manage state by being transformative and by being prescriptive with your language, so that we don't get caught in stuff, story, and script. So start to think about managing state, start to look at chunking time down with the session map, and start to identify your fluff. And that's going to help you to really, get into this process and to have success when we get further down the track and actually start looking at doing the complete process. So next week, we're going to get into focus. We're going to look at joining the dots. We're going to look at a process called feedback loop questioning, which is the most powerful process that I know. So we're going to get into that next week, which is going to be really, really exciting. And that's going to help with that's just going to build on where we are today. So it is going to help you to manage state. It's going to help you to become more prescriptive with your questioning. It's going to help you to really get into the point or develop the picture really quickly and lead beautifully into the point really, really fast and effective. So great sharing the information with you. Really great to have you here. Thank you for your comments and feedback to those that shared tonight, which was really, really great. I really look forward to seeing how you go with the process over the next period of time. I think, yeah, I think it's going to be really, really great. Obviously, happy to take any more questions. If I haven't got to you tonight, please, either type in or send me an email. I can be reached at marcus@marcusbird.com.au. In the next week or so, I'm going to be finalising more dates for the program. So just organising the next 12 months in my practice. And so I'll have that to you really, really shortly. Got some stuff happening in Melbourne and Sydney in the next couple of weeks for those that might be interested. So please send me an email if you've got some available time over the next couple of weeks. Love to be able to share the information with you live. And I think that's where you're really going to bed down the information. Obviously, if you're international and outside Australia, that's not going to be possible in the short term, but I really look forward to being able to deliver that to you in the near future. Would be really, really great. So thanks, guys, for being here tonight. Look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. And again, if you've got any questions, want to talk about the process, ask any more, please just send me an email. I'm happy to set up a session with you, and we could run a 3-minute coach process around whatever questions that you might have from the session tonight. So thanks again for being here. Thanks, Corinne and Leander. Thanks, Adam, Trudy, Joanne, Chris, and everybody else on the webinar. Obviously can't get to everyone, but really great to have you guys here, and look forward to carrying this on over the next few weeks. So ciao for now, and I'll see you soon.